Commander Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova and watched the stars through the main window. The ship was quiet, except for the soft hum of the engines. They had been traveling through deep space for 3 weeks now, looking for new planets that humans might want to visit someday. Jake was drinking his morning coffee when Lieutenant Amy Carter called out from her station near the back of the bridge. Amy was the ship's communication officer, and she looked excited about something. "Commander, we're getting a signal," Amy said. "It's been repeating for the last 3 days." The computer finally figured out what it says. Jake walked over to Amy's station. The Terra Nova had the best communication equipment that Earth could build, but alien signals were always tricky to understand. Sometimes it took days or weeks to figure out what other species were trying to say. "What kind of signal?" Jake asked. "It's a distress call, sir, coming from a system about 47 light-years away. But there's something strange about it." Sat down in the chair next to Amy's station. He had been dealing with alien communications for 5 years now, ever since humans joined the big group of alien species called the Galactic community. Most distress calls were pretty simple. Ships broke down, colonies ran out of food, or pirates attacked trade routes. "Show me what they're saying," Jake said. Amy pressed a few buttons, and the alien message appeared on her screen.
"I have a computer."
Had translated it into English, but some parts still looked confusing. "Emergency beacon activated," Amy read out loud. "Predator species detected. Colony ship Serenity's Dawn requesting immediate evacuation assistance. Warning, hostile environment. Do not approach unless equipped for Class 9 hazard protocols." Jake read the message again. Class 9 hazard protocols were something he had heard about but never seen used. According to the Galactic community's safety rules, Class 9 meant a planet so dangerous that most alien species couldn't survive there for more than a few hours. "Amy, pull up the data about this system. I want to know what kind of planet they're talking about." Amy's fingers moved quickly over her controls. Information about the Kepler 442 system filled her screen. Jake read through the numbers and started to smile. The planet had gravity that was 1.4 times stronger than Earth's gravity. The air pressure was 3 times thicker than what humans were used to. Temperatures went from 40 degrees below zero to 60 degrees above zero. The planet had huge storms that lasted for weeks. The oceans were full of acid that could eat through most metals. But what really made Jake smile was the part about the wildlife. The computer described creatures that were bigger than Earth's dinosaurs, smarter than wolves, and meaner than crocodiles. The alien database said these animals could kill most galactic community species just by looking at them wrong. To Jake, it sounded like a slightly more exciting version of Australia. "Amy, get me Captain Park on the comm," Jake said. "Captain Lisa." Park was in her office reviewing supply reports when Jake's call came through. Lisa had been commanding spaceships for 8 years, and she had never turned down a rescue mission. She listened while Jake explained about the distress call. "Let me understand this," Lisa said when Jake finished. "We have a colony ship full of aliens who are being attacked by pirates. We're stuck near a planet that the galactic community thinks is too dangerous for anyone to survive on. They specifically warned us not to come unless we have Class 9 hazard equipment." "That's right, Captain." Lisa looked at the data on her screen. She had grown up on a ranch in Montana, where winter temperatures hit 50 below zero and summer temperatures reached over 100 degrees. She had spent 2 years working on deep-sea oil rigs where the waves were 30 feet tall and the wind never stopped blowing. Before joining the space program, she had served as a rescue pilot in Alaska, flying helicopters through blizzards to save people who got lost in the wilderness. The planet in the Kepler 442 system sounded like the kind of place her grandfather would have called good hunting weather. "Jake, what kind of equipment do we have in our cargo bays?" "Standard exploration gear, ma'am. Environmental suits rated for extreme conditions, portable shelters, emergency medical supplies, and enough food for 6 months." "What about weapons?" "Have personal defense weapons for the crew, plus the ship's defensive systems. Nothing heavy, but we're not a military vessel." Lisa thought about this for a moment. The Terra Nova was designed for exploration, not fighting. They had 43 crew members and supplies for a long mission. If they got into a fight with real pirates, they would probably lose. But Lisa had read the reports about how other alien species saw humans. Okay, most of the galactic community thought Earth was a death world. A planet so hostile that only the toughest species could survive there. Humans were considered to be natural fighters and survivors. Lisa had always thought this was funny, because humans didn't think of Earth as particularly dangerous. Sure, there were poisonous snakes and hungry bears and terrible storms, but people dealt with that stuff every day. Her little sister went camping in places that the aliens would probably classify as Class 8 hazard zones. Amy, can you tell what species sent the distress call? Yes, ma'am. They're called the Zelari. According to our database, they're refugees. From a war in the next galaxy over, they're peaceful people who just want to find a safe place to live. And the pirates? The signal mentions something called the Korthax. Our database says they're slavers. They capture people and sell them to the highest bidder. Lisa made her decision. Jake set course for the Kepler 442 system. Maximum speed, ma'am. Are you sure? The Korthax are known for being violent, and we don't have Class 9 hazard equipment, Lisa. Smiled Jake. I spent last Christmas with my family in Minnesota. It was 20 below zero. The wind was blowing at 40 miles per hour, and we still went ice fishing. My nephew caught a fish that was bigger than he was, and we cooked it over an open fire while a blizzard was trying to freeze us solid. Don't understand, Captain. The point is, Jake, that what the aliens call a Class 9 hazard zone sounds like what we call Tuesday. Send a message to Earth Command and let them know we're responding to a distress call. Then get the crew ready for a rescue mission. Jake hesitated for a moment. Ma'am, what if this is a trap? What if the Korthax are using the distress call to lure in rescue ships? Lisa looked at the data again. 50,000 Zelari refugees were trapped on a disabled colony ship. It's being hunted by slavers near a planet that most of the galaxy considered uninhabitable. If it was a trap, it was a pretty elaborate one. Then we'll deal with it, Lisa said. But I'm not going to let 50,000 innocent people get sold into slavery just because we're worried about pirates. Yes, ma'am. I'll inform the crew. As Jake left her office, Lisa looked out her window at the stars. Somewhere out there, a ship full of refugees was waiting for help that might never come. The galactic community had rules about Class 9 hazard zones. Most species wouldn't risk their lives to save strangers in such a dangerous place. But humans had never been like most species. They came from a world where helping your neighbors was more important than following safety rules. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars by working together and never giving up. Lisa pressed the button that connected her to the ship's communication system. Attention all crew, she announced. This is Captain Park. We have just received a distress call from a colony ship that is under attack by pirates. We are changing course to provide assistance. I know this mission carries some risks, but that's what we signed up for when we joined the exploration service. We don't leave people behind, no matter who they are or where they come from. All department heads report to the bridge in 10 minutes. That is all. Lisa turned back to her window and watched as the stars began to shift. Terra Nova was turning toward the Kepler 442 system, where 50,000 refugees were waiting for a miracle. They didn't know it yet, but their miracle was about to arrive in the form of a species that thought dangerous planets were just another day at the office. The Terra Nova dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system with a flash of blue light. Captain Lisa Parks stood on the bridge watching as her crew worked to get their sensors working properly after the long jump through space. Report, Lisa said to her crew. Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh was sitting at the pilot station, his hands moving over the controls as he checked all the ship's systems. Steve had learned to fly in some of the worst weather on Earth, including hurricanes and mountain storms. He was the kind of pilot who could land a ship in a tornado if he had to. All systems are working fine, Captain, Steve said. We're at the outer edge of the system, about 12 hours away from the planet at normal speed. Amy Carter was busy at her communication station, trying to pick up more signals from the aliens who had sent the distress call. Her screen was full of information, but most of it was just background noise from space. I'm still getting the distress signal, Amy reported, but it's much weaker now. I think their power is running low. Dr. Ben Rodriguez came onto the bridge carrying a tablet computer full of information about the system they had just entered. Ben was the ship's science officer, and he knew more about alien biology than almost anyone else in the human space program. Captain, I've been studying the data about this system, Ben said. I think I understand why the aliens called this a Class 9 hazard. Lisa looked at the information on Ben's tablet. The planet they were approaching was indeed a hostile world by the standards of most alien species. But as she read through the details, she started to understand why humans might see it differently. The gravity is 1.4 times Earth normal, Ben explained. Most aliens can barely walk in gravity that strong. The air pressure is 3 times what they're used to, which would crush their lungs. The temperature swings are extreme, and the weather patterns are violent. What about the wildlife? Lisa asked. Ben smiled. That's the interesting part. The planet has an ecosystem full of what the Galactic database calls megapredators, creatures that are bigger and stronger than anything most alien species have ever seen. Lisa nodded. She was starting to get a clearer picture of why the Zellery had been so desperate in their distress call. They were peaceful people who came from a quiet world with gentle weather and small animals. This planet would be terrifying. To them, Captain, Amy called out suddenly. I'm detecting multiple ships in the inner system. Some of them are moving. Lisa walked over to Amy's station and looked at her screen. The sensors were showing a large ship that wasn't moving, surrounded by smaller ships that were definitely active. That big ship must be the Zellery colony vessel, Lisa said. What about the smaller ones? Based on their design, I think they're Korthax raiders, Amy replied. 12 ships total, all of them bigger than us. Steve looked up from his pilots. Station captain, if those are Korthax ships, we're going to have a problem. They're known for being aggressive, and they have better weapons than we do. Lisa studied the tactical display on the main screen. The Korthax ships were arranged around the disabled colony vessel, like wolves surrounding a wounded deer. It was a classic slaving operation. Disable the target, board it, take the crew and passengers to sell in the illegal markets. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up more information on his tablet. Captain, the Korthax are one of the most feared pirate groups in this part of the galaxy. They specialize in capturing refugees and other vulnerable populations. They're known for being ruthless. How many people are we talking about? Lisa asked. Amy checked her communications equipment. According to the distress signal, the Serenity's Dawn is carrying 50,000 Zellery refugees. Men, women, and children who are fleeing from a war. Lisa felt her jaw tighten. 50,000. Innocent people were trapped on that ship, and 12 Korthax raiders were probably already boarding it to take them prisoner. By the time other Galactic community ships could respond to the distress call, it would be too late. Steve, how long would it take us to reach the inner system? Lisa asked. At maximum speed, about 2 hours, Steve replied. But Captain, we're just one ship against 12. Even if we could fight them, we don't have enough space to evacuate 50,000 people. Lisa looked at the planet on her screen. It was a brown and green world with white clouds swirling around it. According to the sensors, it had vast oceans, huge continents, and mountain ranges that reached up into the sky. It looked like the kind of world that would be beautiful if you could survive on it. What if we didn't try to evacuate them? Lisa said slowly. Her crew looked at her with confusion. I don't understand, Captain, Ben said. Lisa pointed at the planet. The Korthax think this world is uninhabitable, right? They're not going to land there because their database says it's too dangerous. But what if we could get the Zellery down to the surface? Captain, the planet has megapredators, Dr. Rodriguez said. Even if the Zellery could survive the environment, they'd be eaten by the local wildlife. Lisa smiled. Not if they had the right kind of protection. Steve was starting to understand what Lisa was thinking. You want to use the planet as a hiding place? More than that, Lisa said. I want to use it as a weapon. Amy looked up from her communication station.
Captain.
I'm getting more detailed scans of the Korthax ships now. They're definitely in the process of boarding the colony vessel. We need to move fast if we're going to help those people. Lisa made her decision. Steve, plot a course for the inner system. Maximum speed, but keep us hidden behind that large moon until we're ready to make our move. Yes, ma'am. Amy, Try to establish communication with the Zalari ship. Let them know help is coming. I'll do my best, Captain. Hey, Ben, I want you to study everything we know about the local ecosystem on that planet. I need to know what we're dealing with down there. As the Terra Nova accelerated toward the inner system, Lisa went to her ready room to think about what they were going to do. She had commanded rescue missions before, but never anything like this. 12 enemy ships, 50,000 refugees, and a planet that most of the galaxy considered uninhabitable. But Lisa had grown up on Earth, where people regularly lived in places that were just as dangerous. She had seen humans thrive in deserts where the temperature reached over 50 degrees Celsius. She had watched people build cities in places where hurricanes happened every year. She knew families who lived in Alaska where winter temperatures dropped to 40 below zero and summer days lasted for 24 hours. Humans had a talent for turning hostile environments into homes. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy what that looked like. 20 minutes later, Ben came to her ready room with his report about the planet. Captain, I've been studying the ecosystem data, Ben said. The predators on this world are impressive, but they're not invincible. They're adapted to hunt the local prey animals, which are much smaller and weaker than humans. What about the environmental conditions? Lisa asked. Challenging but manageable. We'd need environmental suits for extended exposure, but humans could survive there for weeks or months with the right equipment. The bigger problem would be food and shelter. Lisa nodded. What about the Zalari? Could they survive on the surface? In a short time? Yes. We're not as tough as humans, but they're not helpless either. Yeah, the main danger would be the predators. In the extreme weather, Lisa stood up and walked to her window. The distance, she could see the planet growing larger as they approached. It looked wild and dangerous and beautiful. Ben, in your opinion, could a group of humans protect 50,000 Zalari refugees on that planet's surface? Ben thought about this for a moment. If the humans knew what they were doing, and if they had the right equipment, yes, I think. It's possible, but it would be extremely dangerous. Lisa smiled. Good, because that's exactly what we're going to do. The Terra Nova continued its approach toward the inner system, where 12 Korthax raiders were about to learn that humans had a very different definition of the word impossible. Commander the Scalar stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched his boarding teams work. The Korthax had been raiding ships for over 20 years, and this operation was going exactly as planned. The Zalari colony ship was helpless, its engines destroyed and its crew too frightened to fight back. Dexcalar was a large creature, even by Korthax standards. His thick gray skin was covered with scars from dozens of battles, and his 4 arms each carried a different weapon. He had built his reputation by being more ruthless than any other raider in this part of the galaxy. Status report, Dexcalar growled to his communication officer. Sir, we have secured the main decks of the colony ship. Our teams are gathering. The Zelar in the cargo bays, its total count is approximately 50,000 individuals. Dexcalar smiled, showing teeth that were designed for tearing meat. 50,000 slaves would bring enough money to buy his own planet. The Zalari were known for being intelligent and hardworking, which made them valuable in the slave markets. Any resistance? He asked. None, sir. The Zalari are a peaceful species. They have no weapons and no military training. Excellent. How long until we can begin loading them onto our ships? Another 2 hours, sir. Need time to sort them by age and skill level. This Caller was about to respond when his sensor officer called out in alarm. Commander, we have an unknown ship approaching from the outer system. It's moving fast. Dexcalar looked at his tactical display. A single ship was accelerating toward them at maximum speed. According to his sensors, it was much smaller than any of his 12 raiders. Identification, he asked. The design matches human ships from the Terra Federation, his sensor officer replied. One vessel crew of approximately 40 to 50. Laughed. Humans were known to the Korthax, but they were not considered a threat. They came from a dangerous planet, but they were still just another species in the galactic community. One small human ship against his entire fleet was either a mistake or a suicide mission. Open a communication channel, Dexcalar ordered. Let's see what these humans want. On the bridge of the Terra Nova, Captain Lisa Park received the incoming transmission from the Korthax flagship. The alien that appeared on her screen was even uglier than she had expected, with gray skin and too many teeth. "Human vessel," Lexglow said in broken English. "You are interfering with legal salvage operation. Leave this system immediately, or be destroyed." Lisa looked at the Korthax commander with the same expression she used when dealing with wild animals back on Earth: calm, steady, and completely unafraid. "This is Captain Lisa Park of the Terran Federation vessel Terra Nova," she replied. "We received a distress call from the Zelari colony ship. We're here to provide assistance."
Excalar
showed more of his teeth. "The Zelari ship is damaged beyond repair. We are removing the crew and passengers for their own safety. You will leave now." "I don't think so," Lisa said calmly. "We're going to take those people somewhere safe, and you're going to let us do it." Excalar couldn't believe what he was hearing. A single human ship was challenging his entire fleet. Either these humans were insane, or they had some kind of secret weapon. "You have one human ship," Excalar said. "I have 12 Korthax raiders. Do you really want to fight this battle?" Lisa smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Actually, I think it's going to be fun," she said. Then cut the communication. On the Terra Nova's bridge, Lieutenant Commander Steve Walsh was already moving his hands over the pilot controls. He had been listening to the conversation and preparing for what came next. "Steve, remember that time we flew through Hurricane Martha to rescue those oil rig workers?" Lisa asked. "Yes, ma'am. That was a good day." "This is going to be just like that, except in space and with more shooting." Steve grinned. "Understood, Captain. Shall we show them how humans fly? Make it happen." What happened next was unlike anything. In the Korthax military database, instead of maintaining a safe distance and trying to negotiate, the Terra Nova accelerated directly into the middle of the Korthax formation. When the raiders opened fire, the human ship didn't retreat or try to fight back in a normal way. Instead, it began to move like a living thing. Steve Walsh had learned to fly in Earth's atmosphere, where weather systems could kill you and mountain peaks could appear out of nowhere. He had piloted rescue helicopters through tornadoes and flown cargo planes through thunderstorms. Flying a spaceship through enemy weapons fire was just another day at the office. The Terra Nova twisted and turned between the Korthax ships like a fish swimming through a coral reef. The raiders' weapons were designed for normal space combat, where ships moved in predictable patterns and followed standard military tactics. They couldn't track a vessel that was being flown like it was dodging trees and buildings and lightning bolts. "Shuttle Bay Alpha, you're clear for launch," Lisa announced, as the Terra Nova spiraled around a Korthax cruiser, using the enemy ship's own hull as cover from the other raiders. The rescue shuttles that launched from the Terra Nova were piloted by humans who had volunteered for the most dangerous jobs on Earth: Marine. Sergeant Chris Barnes had spent 3 years fighting in the Amazon rainforest, where every plant and animal was trying to kill him. Pilot Nicole Turner had flown medical rescue missions in the Rocky Mountains during blizzard season. Engineer Tony Martinez had worked on deep-sea oil platforms during hurricane season. To them, rescuing civilians from a disabled spaceship while under enemy fire was just another. Tuesday, the first shuttle reached the Zelari colony ship while the Terra Nova was still dancing between the Korthax raiders. Nicole Turner brought her shuttle into the colony ship's docking bay with the same calm precision she had used to land helicopters on mountain peaks during snowstorms. Inside the colony ship, the Zelari refugees were huddled in the cargo bays, surrounded by Korthax guards who were becoming increasingly nervous as explosions echoed through the ship's hull. The guards had been told this would be an easy operation, but the sounds of battle outside suggested otherwise. When the human rescue team entered the cargo bay, the Korthax guards raised their weapons. Sergeant Barnes looked at the armed aliens. With the same expression he had used when facing drug smugglers in the jungle, "You have 2 choices," Barnes said calmly. "You can put down your weapons and walk away, or you can find out why humans are considered apex predators." The Korthax guards had heard stories about humans, but they had never seen one in person. Barnes was not particularly large by human standards, but he moved with the confident grace of someone who had survived in places where everything wanted to eat him. One of the guards decided to test the human's resolve and raised his weapon. Barnes moved faster than the Korthax thought possible. "Shh," Barnes asked. The remaining guards dropped their weapons and ran. Barnes turned to the crowd of Zelari refugees. They were smaller than humans, with pale blue skin and large eyes that showed their fear. Many of them were families with young children who were crying from the noise and confusion. "My name is Sergeant Barnes," he said in a calm, gentle voice. "We're here to help you. We're going to take you somewhere safe." It's an elderly Zelari female stepped forward. According to Barnes' translation device, her name was Zarelin, and she was the colony ship's captain. "How many of us can you take?" Zarelin asked. Barnes looked at the crowd of refugees. There were nearly 3,000 Zelari packed into this one cargo bay, and his shuttle was designed to carry 40 passengers maximum. By any reasonable standard, it was impossible. "All of you," Barnes said simply. "But your shuttle is too small," Zarelin protested. Barnes smiled. "Ma'am, I once helped evacuate an entire village using 2 helicopters and a pickup truck during a volcano eruption. We'll make it work." As Barnes organized the evacuation, the Terra Nova continued its wild dance. Around the Korthax fleet, Steve Walsh was enjoying himself immensely as he put the ship through maneuvers that defied both physics and common sense. "Captain, the Korthax are trying to form up for a coordinated attack," Amy reported from her communication station. "Them try," Lisa replied. "Steve, take us through that debris field from their damaged ship. And Amy, start broadcasting the evacuation coordinates to all shuttles." "Ma'am, that debris field is full of metal fragments and fuel leaks," Steve warned. "Exactly, the Korthax won't follow us in there." Steve grinned and dove the Terra Nova into the cloud of wreckage. The Korthax raiders tried to pursue, but their larger ships couldn't navigate through the dangerous obstacles. They watched in frustration as the human vessel disappeared into the debris field, like a dolphin diving into rough water. By the time the Terra Nova emerged on the other side, all 4 of its shuttles had completed their evacuation runs. 50,000 Zelari refugees were now packed into every available space on the human ship. Along with their few possessions and hopes for a better life, all shuttles recovered, Nicole reported as her team secured the last of the refugees. "Everyone's aboard, Captain." Lisa looked at her crew with pride. They had just pulled off the impossible and they made it look easy. "Outstanding work, everyone." "Now comes the fun part." "What's that, Captain?" Steve asked. Commander Thescaler stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human ship had somehow rescued all 50,000 Zelari refugees and was now heading toward the planet. The same planet that his own database classified as uninhabitable. "Sir, the human vessel has entered the planet's atmosphere," his sensor officer reported. "They're landing in the northern continent near a large river system." Thescaler's 4 arms clenched into fists. Those refugees represented millions of credits in the slave markets. He was not going to let one small human ship steal his prize. "Prepare. Landing shuttles," he ordered. "We're going down to the surface to recover our cargo." His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Krickstall, looked nervous. "Sir, the planet is classified as a Class 9 hazard zone. Our environmental suits are only rated for Class 6 conditions. The humans are down there with no protection except their basic gear," Thescaler growled. "If they can survive on that world, so can we. Besides, we have superior numbers and firepower." What Thescaler didn't understand was that humans hadn't gone to the planet despite its dangers. They had gone there because of them. On the planet's surface, Captain Lisa Park stood on a rocky hill overlooking a river valley that reminded her of the wilderness areas in Montana. The sky was a deep purple color, and 2 small moons were visible even during the day. The air was thick and humid, making it feel like breathing through a wet towel. Around her, Terra Nova's crew was working with quiet efficiency to set up a temporary camp. The Zelari refugees were huddled together near the ship's shuttles, looking terrified of everything they saw and heard. "Dr. Ben." Rodriguez approached Lisa with his tablet computer full of sensor readings. "Captain, I've been scanning the local area. Ecosystem here is definitely active. I'm detecting movement patterns that suggest large predators." "How large?" Lisa asked. "Based on the ground vibrations, some of them are probably the size of Earth's biggest dinosaurs, and they appear to be pack hunters." Lisa nodded. She had expected this. Any planet that the galactic community classified as Class 9, Hazard was going to have serious wildlife issues. Marine Sergeant Danny Cooper jogged up to their position, carrying his rifle and wearing a satisfied expression. Danny had grown up hunting. Elk and bear in the wilderness of Alaska, where making a mistake meant becoming food for something bigger than you. "Captain, I've done a perimeter sweep," Danny reported. "We've got company coming. Big tracks in the mud down by the river, and I heard some interesting sounds from the forest." "What kind of sounds?" Ben asked. Danny grinned. "The kind that mean we're not at the top of the food chain anymore." Lisa looked at the Zellery refugees. They were small, peaceful people who had never dealt with anything more dangerous than a thunderstorm. The idea of facing mega-predators would probably give them heart attacks. "Danny, what's your assessment of our defensive position, Captain? If we were trying to fight off these critters using normal tactics, we'd be in trouble. But if we're willing to get creative, this could actually work in our favor. Explain." Danny pointed toward the dense forest that surrounded their valley. "The local predators have probably never seen humans before. They don't know what we're capable of. Based on what I've observed, they hunt using pack tactics similar to wolves or lions. So they're going to expect their prey to run or hide. They're not going to expect their prey to fight back intelligently." Lisa was beginning to understand Danny's thinking. "You want to turn this into a hunting ground?" "Yes, ma'am." "Next, we're going to be the hunters." 20 minutes later, the first Korthax shuttles began landing near the river. The scholar led the landing party personally, wearing environmental gear that made him look like a walking tank. Behind him came 50 of his best raiders. Armed with energy weapons and scanning equipment, the Korthax moved through the alien forest in perfect military formation. Their environmental suits protecting them from the hostile atmosphere. Sensors showed the location of the human camp, and they advanced with confidence. What they didn't notice was that they were being watched. Sergeant Chris Barnes lay perfectly still in the branches of a massive tree, his rifle trained on the Korthax. "Patrol below." Barnes had spent years hunting drug smugglers in the Amazon rainforest. Staying invisible meant staying alive. The Korthax were making enough noise to wake the dead. Their heavy boots crashed through the underbrush. Their environmental suits hummed with machinery, and they were talking constantly on their radio channels. Barnes keyed his own radio with a whisper. "Captain, I have eyes on the first patrol. 12 hostiles moving through Sector 7. Copy that, Barnes. Are they alone?" "Negative. I can see 2 more patrols moving parallel to this one. They're trying to surround our position." "Understood. Execute Phase 2. Phase 2 was something that would have confused most military tacticians in the galaxy. Instead of preparing defensive positions or trying to evacuate, the humans began to move deeper into the forest. But they weren't running away. They were positioning themselves to hunt. Lieutenant Kate Morrison crouched behind a fallen log and watched. Korthax squad moved past her hiding spot. Kate had served as a sniper in some of the most dangerous places on Earth, including war zones where the enemy outnumbered her team by hundreds to 1. The Korthax were good soldiers. They were fighting on a world that followed rules they didn't understand. Their environmental suits were designed to protect them from hostile atmospheres and toxic chemicals. They were not designed to deal with an ecosystem that considered anything that moved to be potential food. Kate was about to radio her position when she heard something that made her freeze. It was a low, rumbling sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The kind of sound that made every instinct in her body scream danger. Through her rifle scope, she watched the Korthax patrol stop and look around nervously. Their environmental suits were picking up the same sound, but their sensors couldn't identify what was making it. Kate could see movement in the shadows between the trees. Something large was circling the Korthax patrol, staying just out of sight. Multiple somethings, actually. "All units. This is Morrison," she whispered into her radio. "We have indigenous wildlife converging on the hostile positions." "Copy that, Morrison." Kate adjusted her scope and tried to get a better view of the creatures moving through the forest. What she saw made her smile. "Captain, I think the local predators have noticed that someone new has entered their territory. They don't look happy about it. The first Korthax raider to disappear was at the rear of his patrol. One moment he was there, complaining about the humidity and the strange smells. The next moment there was just an empty environmental suit lying on the forest floor. Excalibur received the report with growing anger. What do you mean he disappeared? People don't just disappear. Sir, we found his suit, but there's no sign of the body. There are some very large tracks in the mud nearby, and something appears to have been dragged into the forest. Excalibur looked at his tactical display. His 3 patrol groups were spread out across several square kilometers of hostile terrain, and they were all reporting strange sounds and movement in the shadows. All units form up into defensive positions, he ordered. Something is hunting us. What the scholar didn't realize was that 2 different groups were hunting as raiders. The local predators had indeed noticed the new arrivals and were treating them as potential prey. But the humans were also stalking the Korthax, using tactics that had been perfected over millions of years of evolution. Danny Cooper moved through the forest like a ghost, his rifle ready, and his senses alert for any sign of danger. Tracking one of the Korthax patrols for 20 minutes, waiting for the right moment to strike. The aliens were trying to move quietly, but they didn't understand how sound traveled in a forest ecosystem. Their radio chatter was constant, their equipment made mechanical noises, and their heavy breathing was audible through their environmental suits. Danny found a good position, on a ridge overlooking a small clearing, and settled in to wait. According to his radio, Captain Park wanted the Korthax to think they were being hunted by the local wildlife, not by humans. He didn't have to wait long. The Korthax patrol entered the clearing below him, moving in a tight formation with their weapons ready. They were obviously nervous about something. That's when Danny heard the sound that made him grin. It was the same low rumbling he had heard earlier, but much closer now. Something very large was moving through the forest toward the clearing. The Korthax heard it too. They stopped moving and raised their weapons, scanning the tree line for threats. The creature that stepped into the clearing was the size of an Earth's Tyrannosaurus, with the lean build of a wolf and the intelligent eyes of a predator that had never learned to fear anything. Its skin was mottled green and brown, perfect camouflage for the forest environment, but it wasn't alone. 2 more of the creatures emerged from the shadows on the opposite side of the clearing. Moving with the coordinated precision of pack hunters, the Korthax opened fire immediately, their energy weapons sending bright beams of light across the quarter. Clearing, the creatures roared in response, a sound that shook leaves from the trees and made the ground vibrate. The battle for the unnamed world lasted 3 days, though Commander Excalibur would later claim it had been much longer. Time moved differently when you were being hunted by creatures that treated your worst nightmares as friendly neighbors. On the morning of the 4th day, Marine Lieutenant Kate Morrison lay flat on her stomach in the thick grass on top of a hill, watching the last group of Korthax raiders stumble through the valley below. Their environmental suits were torn and dirty, their weapons were almost out of power, and their military formation had completely fallen apart. They were no longer acting like soldiers. They were acting like frightened animals, jumping at every sound and shadow. Morrison to base, Kate whispered into her radio. I have eyes on the final squad. 8 hostiles, moving toward the extraction point. They look broken. Captain Lisa Park received the report from her command post, which was actually a natural cave system that the Zellery refugees had been afraid to enter. The aliens had quickly learned that anywhere humans considered safe was much better than facing the planet's dangers alone. Copy that, Morrison. All units begin herding operations. Drive them to the main clearing. The main clearing was where this would all end. Lisa had chosen it carefully, a wide-open space surrounded by dense forest, with good sight lines and multiple escape routes. It was also the territory of the largest predator pack they had encountered. As Kate watched the surviving Korthax, raiders entered the clearing with their weapons raised, expecting the humans to finally show themselves for a direct fight. What they found instead was something that would give them nightmares for the rest of their lives. The creatures that emerged from the forest were the same species that had been hunting the Korthax for 3 days, but now there were more of them. Much more. The alpha predator was was a massive beast that stood 12 feet tall at the shoulder. With intelligence gleaming in its yellow eyes, behind it came its pack, 20 more creatures of various sizes, all of them focused on the small group of aliens. In the center of the clearing, the scholar raised his weapon with shaking hands. His environmental suit was failing, his troops were exhausted, and he had lost contact with his ships in orbit. This was supposed to have been a simple slaving operation, but it had turned into a nightmare. "Stay together," he ordered his remaining soldiers. "We can fight our way out of this." The predators began to circle the clearing, moving with the coordinated precision of a wolf pack, but they didn't attack immediately. Instead, they seemed to be waiting for something. That's when the humans revealed the secret that had allowed them to dominate Earth's hostile biosphere. From concealed positions around the clearing, human voices began calling to the massive predators. But they weren't making sounds of fear or challenge. They were making the complex vocalizations that Dr. Ben Rodriguez had spent 3 days learning to understand. The predators stopped their circling and turned toward the humans with what could only be described as recognition. Captain Lisa Park stepped out of the forest, walking calmly toward the alpha predator with her hands empty and her movements relaxed. The massive creature watched her approach, its head tilted to one side like a curious dog. When Lisa was close enough to touch it, she began to make the soft clicking sounds that the pack used to communicate with each other. The alpha predator responded with its own series of clicks and rumbles. Dr. Rodriguez, listening from his hiding place, realized he was witnessing the first conversation between humans and the planet's apex predator species, Dexcaler. Watched in disbelief as more humans emerged from the forest. They were not wearing environmental suits. They were not carrying heavy weapons. They were walking among creatures that had been systematically hunting his troops for 3 days. And the predators were treating them like old friends. Sergeant Danny Cooper approached one of the smaller predators and began scratching it behind what passed 4 ears. The creature, which had torn through a Korthax environmental suit just hours earlier, made a sound that was remarkably similar to a cat's. Purr! "This is impossible," the Excalibur said to himself. Captain Park heard him and turned in his direction. "No, Commander. This is just Tuesday." She walked toward the center of the clearing where the surviving Korthax were huddled together. The alpha predator followed her, staying close enough to provide protection, but far enough away to avoid seeming threatening. "See, Commander, you made a fundamental mistake," Lisa continued. "You assumed that because this world was dangerous, it was uninhabitable. But dangerous and uninhabitable are two very different things." Exceller's weapon was still pointed at Lisa, but his hands were shaking too badly to aim properly. "You're all insane. No civilized species could survive on this world," Lisa smiled. "You're right. No civilized species could survive here. But we're not civilized. We're human." She gestured toward the forest around them. "This planet has gravity that's heavier than Earth's, but we grew up in places with mountains and deep oceans. The air pressure here is 3 times what we're used. 2, but we've lived at the bottom of ocean trenches and on top of the highest peaks. The temperature swings from freezing to boiling, but we've built cities in deserts and at the North Pole." The alpha predator made a low, rumbling sound, and Lisa reached up to pat its massive head. "And the wildlife here is big and dangerous, but so were the animals we shared Earth with for millions of years. The difference is, we learned to work with them instead of just trying to kill them." Dr. Rodriguez emerged from the forest carrying his tablet computer and looking excited. "Captain, I've been analyzing their communication patterns. These creatures have a complex social structure with defined territories and pack hierarchies. They're not just predators, they're intelligent." "How intelligent?" Lisa asked. "Based on their behavior over the past 3 days, I'd say they're roughly equivalent to Earth's dolphins or whales. They can plan, coordinate attacks, and they've been observing us to determine whether we're a threat to their territory." Lisa nodded. "And what did they decide?" Ben smiled. "They decided we're another apex predator species. They respect us because we respect them." Excaler was still trying to process what he was seeing. "This is not possible. Galactic community. has rules about Class 9 hazard worlds. No species can survive in these conditions. Commander, Lisa said gently, the galactic community has never met a species like humans before. We didn't evolve on a nice, safe world with gentle weather and small animals. We evolved on a planet where everything was trying to kill us, and we survived by being tougher, smarter, and more adaptable than anything else. She pointed toward the edge of the clearing, where a group of Zelari children were playing under the watchful eyes of both human adults and several of the smaller predators. The Zelari understand this now. They know that the most dangerous place in the galaxy can also be the safest, if you have the right kind of protection. Excalibur's weapon finally stopped shaking, not because he felt more confident, but because he realized how pointless it was. Even if he killed every human in the clearing, the predators would tear him apart. And if he somehow survived that, he was still trapped on a world that his own species considered uninhabitable. "What do you want?" he asked. Lisa considered this question for a moment. "I want you to leave this system and never come back. I want you to tell every slaver and pirate in the galaxy that this world is under human protection. And I want you to remember that there are some fights you can't win, no matter how many ships you have." The Excalibur looked around the clearing. One more time, human adults were working alongside massive predators to set up shelters for the Zelari refugees. Children of two different species were playing together while creatures that could kill a Korthax with one bite watched over them like protective guardians. It was the most impossible thing he had ever seen, and yet it was happening right in front of him. "How do I know you'll let me leave?" he asked. Lisa smiled and made a series of clicking sounds to the alpha predator. The massive creature responded by moving to one side, creating a clear path to the forest. "Because, Commander, we're not like you. We don't kill people just because we can. We protect people because that's what decent beings do." Scalora and his surviving troops walked slowly toward the edge of the clearing. As they reached the forest, the alpha predator made one final sound, a low rumble that needed no translation. It was a warning. "Don't come back." 6 hours later, the remaining Korthax ships left the system at maximum speed. The Excalibur's final report to his superiors was brief. Target system designated as Extreme Hazard Zone. Human Death World colony established. Recommend permanent avoidance. 3 months later, the planet was officially named Haven by the Galactic community, though it remained classified as uninhabitable by most species. The Zelari colonists had voted unanimously to request joint citizenship in the Terran Federation, becoming the first alien species to voluntarily join humanity's growing interstellar community. Captain Lisa Park stood on the hill overlooking New Haven City, watching as Zelari architects worked with human engineers to design buildings that could withstand the planet's extreme weather. In the distance, she could see children of both species playing together while the local predators kept watch.